Hi, everybody. It's Bob Ost, and it's Friday. It's what is it? March. Oh, good Lord, what is it? It's March 13th. Of course, it's 13th. I mean, I just had my birthday on March 11th. How can I not remember what the date is? Um, as you may or may not know, I've we've been off for 2 weeks because I was sick in bed, but I'm back and we're doing this and we're doing back to our community gatherings, and I couldn't be happier about that. We started doing these as a community service when COVID first hit. It was an opportunity for people to come together and feel part of a community, even though we were all in isolation. Now, 6 years later, 6 years later, here we are out of isolation, back to something resembling normal, although a lot of us don't feel that the normal that we have now is the same normal we had before shutdown. It's a very different kind of new normal in many ways. But we're talking about theater, we're talking about live performance, we're talking about the arts, we're talking about all the things that we love talking about. And if you're new to us and you're just finding us on YouTube, I just want you to know that Theater Resources Unlimited is a small arts organization located in Manhattan. We used to be very Manhattan centric, but because of COVID, we are now no longer Manhattan centric. We have people who come here from all over the country and all over the world. So it's kind of a point of pride. It surprises me, but it's a point of pride. We are definitely doing this for a larger population than I used to have before COVID. So thank you, COVID, for at least one thing. Um, so today we're going to talk about it's somewhat of a broad topic, actually. We're talking about immersive theater, and I think that we're going to have to start by a little bit of disambiguation about immersive theater. I think it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I'm going to bring my guests on. I'm going to talk to them and see if they agree with me or not. I want you to meet Elijah Bienz. Um, there you are. Hi, Elijah. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. And Blair, you're not going to come on camera, but can I hear you and just we can see if we can make you part of the mix here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah,
Hopefully
you're
everyone
here.
can hear me. Yes.
We hear you. We
Yeah.
hear you. Okay. So let's start with immersive. This could have been a broader topic, and in fact, I want to broaden it a little bit. I want to talk about alternative theater in general, but I want to
Mhm.
talk about immersive theater because both Blair and Elijah are specifically involved in forms of immersive theater. And I say forms of immersive theater because, if I'm not mistaken, immersive theater takes a lot of different forms. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
so Blair, can you talk a little bit about that, and then talk about why you're opening up? Give me the dirt.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe Elijah, you'll agree with this. Immersive doesn't really mean anything. Like it's kind of a term that can mean so many different things that it's actually reached a point where it's meaningless. So there's been so many different experiences and so many different types of performance, types of art, types of entertainment that have described themselves as immersive that I think often audiences are confused about what it means when somebody says immersive.
Well, let's start with this. Everybody assumes that site-specific is immersive. Um,
Yes, and that's not necessarily true. The funny thing is, like, experiential could be immersive, site-specific could be immersive, interactive could be immersive, but that doesn't mean that they actually are. And that's where, each person who creates immersive theater has to kind of create their own definition and define it for their audience, which is a really big, challenging thing for marketing. But when most people are talking about immersive, they are talking about some combination of engagement or interactivity with the audience, environment building, or site-specific interaction, and sort of moving past the proscenium, but not always.
so, Elijah, your company is Mystery, remind me, Mystery Musicals, Mystery Music,
Mystery players.
Mystery Players. Oh, here comes the cough. Hold on just a second. And this is why I haven't done this for 2 weeks. Oh God. So tell us about Mystery Players. When was it
So,
founded? Who founded it? Why did they do it? And why are you interested in it?
so Mystery Players is a musical murder mystery company that is based in New York. It was originally founded by Kevin Story. He is an actor in New York, and he has been doing immersive theater for like 3 decades, I think. And he sort of started the company to do his own version of immersive theater. Because we did before we he started Mystery Players and we started doing all of this, we both in our own respects worked for various immersive theater companies. We did a lot of murder mysteries that were immersive, and so he brought me on board to sort of launch this project because he also wanted to see what it would look like if we did musical murder mysteries. Which is such a wild concept, but is so much fun to do. Yeah, and so it was just this idea that he had that took off, and here we are, I think about 3 years later, running this company where we do both public and private shows uh, as murder mysteries in an immersive sense.
So immersive specifically would mean interactive, right? With your, it's interactive with the audience.
Yes.
Okay.
So what I think is I think you can have something that's immersive and not necessarily interactive, and you can have
Right.
a show that's interactive that's not necessarily immersive. I have always seen immersive theater as if we look at standard theater, sort of what Blair was mentioning about like that proscenium feel, I think there's always this thought that we know where the show is happening, we know where the audience is sitting, and there's sort of this respective, we're not in the world, but we're merely observing it. And so I think something is immersive when you sort of break that wall, when there is no, this is the audience and this is the show, and they can be in any place at any time.
Blair, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I definitely agree that it's about breaking the fourth wall and sort of
Mhm.
breaking down that barrier between audience and performance in whatever form that takes for the practitioners and the creatives.
So Blair, let's go to you for a second. And um, I actually didn't know. I guess I could have known it, but I didn't realize that you had an interest in alternative forms of theater. I should know better because you do a lot of stuff in the Edinburgh Fringe, and certainly it's not all standard. Um,
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit about your aesthetic and how this has led you to immersive and how it led you to Denver, for goodness
Yeah.
sake.
So I've been actually working on immersive theater and immersive projects alongside my more traditional producing since 2017, 18. One of the first projects I did, well, immersive projects, was there was a production of Sweeney Todd that transferred from London. When they originally performed it, it was set in a pie shop in Tooting. And then they recreated that pie shop in a space that Cameron McIntosh had on the West End, and then finally recreated that at the Greenwich House Theater. And that was where the audience was came in before the show. They got to eat a pie made by Bill Yassis, who was the White House pastry chef. And then the performance of Sweeney Todd happened within the confines of this pie shop and sort of broke the fourth wall in that way that people were performing on chairs and tables where the audience was sitting. And if there was a scene that obviously that was happening in the pie shop was in the pie shop, but then if it was happening in some other location, they kind of had to get creative with the way that that was presented. So that was the first project that I was involved with as a producer and immersive, and it was very successful. A lot of people loved that show. People came back like 40 times. There was one person who always came back and sat in the same seat, and we were really concerned for her, actually, how many times she came back. But alongside that, especially as the pandemic hit and we were all figuring out what we were doing, my first move was leaning into technology and finding different ways to present live work and live performance. One of the first things I did, I think, by August of 2020, I created a new play festival in virtual reality, and that, in a way, is immersive. I would not describe it as immersive, but and so having the audience members be in these worlds that we were creating was basically a virtual version of immersive theater. And then also did live radio plays that used binaural technology, which kind of is like stereo in your brain, to immerse people in the world using sound as opposed to visuals or virtual reality or physical space. So immersive has always been a part of my practice as a producer. Making Dirt in Denver is kind of the outgrowth of that idea. So I will admit that I love immersive from a producing standpoint, but I'm not the creative. My creative partner is a writer and director named Steve Wargo, who was in New York for 2 decades before moving to Denver and created for many, many years what he would have called environmental theater. And I
Okay,
don't know if
okay. So let's make a distinction then.
there's no distinction. We if immersive wasn't the popular word, we would just be saying environmental. Like it's literally that's how vague immersive is. But immersive is the buzzword, so you use the buzzword because that's what gets people in the door. When we're talking about environments, we're talking about the using a full use of the space for the performance. So not having that separation between audience, not having a place where the audience is sitting and the actors are performing, but the actors are performing everywhere, kind of all around you.
So
So
so is improv theater with prompts from the audience, is that immersive?
I would say no, but it's not. I'm not in charge of deciding what immersive is.
We gotta appoint someone because it's this term keeps sliding around.
Well, it's kind of to me, immersive and artificial intelligence are similar in that they don't really mean anything. You just throw it onto whatever you're doing, and people go, "Oh, I like that." If we wanted to be a little bit smarter about it, we could have these individual definitions, or maybe the same way we say musical theater or Shakespeare or experimental, we could have subsets of immersive, but immersive is already a subset, so it starts to get to be too many layers. But when we're talking about environmental, the way that he was creating was utilizing non-traditional spaces, right? You weren't performing in a theater, you're performing called site specific, called environmental, but the site became the performance space. And so I don't know if there's any New Yorkers in there, like the Let Love In Astoria, you would create performances in the bar that would utilize the full bar as the playing space. So with our practice, what we believe in is full use of space. We believe in audience agency, that is the audience gets to determine what their experience is like, whether that's what they're watching, where they're going, how they're interacting, and then interactivity as a key element of it as well. So those are kind of the three pillars of the type of immersive that we create. And for this project, we are building out a 10,000 square foot space with 11 different environments. Each of those environments will be fully designed, fully
Did you
rendered as
see Elijah's eyes just went
um,
wide?
and 22 cast members. And the audience has the full right and use of the space to follow any character that they want, be in any room that they want, and kind of follow this story as they go. So similar to Sleep No More, but I'll say that the difference is Sleep No More is very movement based, and we are very narrative driven. So we're driven by narrative and text and storytelling that is comes out of language.
So a lot of this
So
started, I guess, with Tamara. That was one of the early
yes, yeah. That's
ones.
actually when we talk about when Steve talks about his inspirations and the sort of practice of it developing environmental, that's one of his big references.
Interesting. Let's go to Elijah for a second. Or more than a second, probably. I'll give you a full minute to there. Elijah, tell me, what is the basic aesthetic of your company, and why is immersive the best way of storytelling for what you're doing?
So I think, I mean, theater, I think in a lot of ways comes down to fun. Like it's all of us trying to play. And I think when we do the shows that we do and why the choice was made to go in an immersive sense as opposed to sticking more traditional is because when you go immersive and you let go of that idea that there needs to be this fourth wall, and for example, Mystery Players uses a lot of interaction. So we are a very interactive performance. That's how we create the immersive feel. It allows a little bit more of an intimate connection with the audience. You have more jokes that land. You have more fun with them because instead of sitting there and being like, I'm going to say this and hope it lands, um, we are a lot more, we have script, but it's a lot of improv as well. So we're able to actually work with the audience to create the story that they sort of want to have. So whereas we can have the same murder, we have the same basic plot. No two shows are necessarily going to flow the exact same way because we are involving the audience so much in what's happening. It also kind of makes it feel like being in a live, a room to room version of Clue, as opposed to watching Clue happen in front of you.
So a couple of touchstones that occur to me. Edwin Drood, which has the audience makes decisions at the end about which way the plot's going to go. So do you have it pre-written in different ways depending on how an audience responds?
So funny enough that you mentioned that because I did Edwin Drood in college. Incredible show, loved it.
Why am I
Um,
not surprised?
yeah, well, I mean, it's moments like this where I go, wow, my career really led me to murder mystery, and I never knew it until now. Um, we so how it works for us is we have a written script. So we have a plot line, we have an entire script that we can use. So we go into a show already us as the actors knowing who the killer is. Something that we do that's fun is when we go into a show, not all of the characters are actors. So a few of us, so we'll go and maybe about half of the cast will be actors, and then we make the rest of the show audience members. So we make them the rest of the characters in this murder mystery. So we lead them through it. They don't know who the killer is. I mean, we don't tell them who the killer is, but it's sort of this fun navigation where we know the big plot points we need to make happen. However, it's always fascinating based on who's accusing who of what their personal relationships are. Because sometimes we do public shows where our audiences don't know each other at all. And sometimes we're doing a private event where it's an entire family or it's an entire school or something where they all know each other really well. And that changes the dynamics of the show dramatically, and it's kind of fascinating to watch and do.
So, Blair, the venue that you described that you're building sounds amazing. You said I think at one point that you don't necessarily plan on having the audience move from room to room, but you do have the opportunity of doing that in future if you want that to be part of your scheme, don't you? Or
The audience can move from room to room. Yeah.
oh, I
The
thought you
audience,
said earlier that wasn't that wasn't a big part of your plan right now.
no, that's a huge part of it. That's kind of the whole
Oh,
thing, is that the audience agency is a core element of
okay. I
our
misheard
practice of
that.
immersive. Now, what is unique about this, and again, as we kind of start to refine what immersive even means, there's a big difference between audience is moving and has their own agencies, makes their own decisions, and that the audience is guided through immersive environments. So if we take, for example, Masquerade, which is currently in New York, that is immersive, but it is processional. You go from room to room as directed by the show and by the staff and by the characters, opposed to going to room based on your own whims. So there, even within that, there are different ways of expressing the sort of idea of immersive and the idea of movement from room to room.
Want to remind the speaking of room, the people in the room, any questions or any clarifications you want, please put into the chat. And Owen, don't hesitate to let us know if somebody wants clarification about something, because I basically all we've clarified is the fact that immersive is not clarified, not very clear. It can be a lot of different things. Um, and basically, if I actually broadened it to alternative theater, we would be talking about devised theater too, and devised theater can be immersive as well. Um,
Mhm.
so I don't know where to go with this. It's like it means so many things. Um,
I, I think for
I
most people, it's that old, it's that old quote. I know it when I see it. Like
oh, like art. It's art, yeah.
I can tell you what's not immersive, for the most part, but I can't necessarily define it. without getting a sense of what people are already creating.
So there are degrees of immersive
Yes.
in theater, which is something we also. So basically, in order to kind of tickle everybody's creative bone here, um, immersive is just an open door that says, come on in and try this. There, as writers and as actors, I think we have to think in a different way. I know that Elijah, your company teaches actors how to act in immersive theater. What are the basis of some of your teachings?
So when we started doing the workshops to try and teach actors this, we did it because we noticed that a lot of times, especially in our company and the other projects that we've done, when actors come in having not done immersive theater before and coming into this realm, especially in our version of immersive theater, where it's immersive through interaction, um, it's it it's very, very intimate with the audience, and sometimes that throws people because I feel like it's a big emotional change for you as the performer. If I'm looking out at an audience and I'm just like I'm performing, but I'm not necessarily like looking somebody in the eyes versus standing in front of somebody and specifically interacting with them because you're dissolving that fourth wall. And sometimes that's a little jarring for actors who haven't done that before.
Yeah.
Um, so instead of saying my lines, above the audience's head, I'm looking at people and having this conversation with them. And especially if you're doing a work where you have lines, sometimes looking somebody in the eyes who you've never looked at before can throw you. So it's a lot of being able to think on your feet. And that's where a lot of improvisational skills come in. Even if you're in a moment where maybe you're not necessarily improvising the lines, it's being able to keep things fresh and sort of teaching the idea that you may not have the same scene partner twice if we're talking about the audience being your scene partners.
Yeah. And you may not have any scene partner, which is really interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, and there were a couple of comments that I think were worth.
Yeah, we have something from Eric Rothman. He's very interested in how you developed and rehearsed the structure for the play.
I want to
Oh
actually
boy.
go even deeper than that. I'd like to know where the how do you know that something is going to work immersively? Who's coming up with the concepts and the plays themselves?
Well, I think this is one thing that can start to get a little bit out of hand when it comes to people sort of hearing a buzzword like immersive and then saying, okay, I'm going to do that. And this is actually something, if any, but most people here have probably heard me talk before. We're often too interested in trying to take the story or the structure of something that we have and just like figure out how to shove it into a movie or an immersive space or a radio play or whatever, instead of thinking, I have a story. How do I adapt this story to the new thing? And I know we all love theater and we can get a little obsessive, but when you are taking something and you are trying to do it in a new medium, you do need to change it. So when we were creating this, Steve and I talked through a couple of different ideas. We have like 10 now because you just start to when you have a space, you're inspired by the space. But we talked through a couple of different ideas, just of a broad idea of what this story could be. What do we want the audience to feel? What are the environments that we want to create? Where do we want to start? And we started to sort of drill down on that primarily actually based on what we thought would be the appropriate type of show to put out into the world right now and what we thought our audience would enjoy and what that we thought would be like uh, different from the other offerings that exist in the immersive space. So you kind of reverse engineer from there. Like, what is the product? I know we hate that word, but what is the product that you're trying to create? And then what are the resources that you have? So we could have come up with a brilliant immersive play that took place in a football stadium, but we don't have a football stadium. We have 10,000 square feet. So you start to build it's like chicken and egg. You sort of do them in tandem. And when we decided on a space, that's when not only did we settle on, okay, which of our fun ideas do we actually want to execute, but now we have to write it around the space that we have. and the structure that we've built and how we think we can get the audience in and how they can move. And the really great thing about working with someone like Steve, because he's a writer and director, but also, which is really helpful, but also he's produced in the past, is that the producing the actual execution and the experience for the audience in immersive is the number one thing. Experience for the audience and maybe that's actually the real definition of immersive. Nobody cares about the experience of the audience when you're talking about a traditional play outside of did they like the play or did they not like the play. Nobody asked if the audience was comfortable or if the audience was having a good time or if the audience had a drink. Nobody really cares about any of those things. And immersive asks you to actually really care about how the audience is experiencing the work outside of just watching and listening. And so everything we did was structured around, okay, how is the audience going to experience the work? And you just say, does this sound like a good idea? Yes. And then I sent Steve off for a year to go write it. And it's 381 pages.
What?
Yes, 381 pages. So we have 11 different environments, and there's a scene happening in all of those environments at any given time. So there's about 24 hours of content when you add it all up. And all of that is happening simultaneously within the space. Um, I could go on, I could go on more and more about that. Maybe I could come back around to like the actual rehearsing of it a little bit later, but it is about having the inspiration. It's about figuring out what is the experience that you want to give the audience and then developing the work around that experience.
Blair, let me ask you this because I know you have a lot of things going on in the UK. Did you ever see the immersive Great Gatsby?
Yes.
So that might be an interesting comparison. The immersive Great Gatsby versus the staged Great Gatsby. Was it worth do was it worth being immersive for the Great Gatsby to decide the creative people to decide that should be an immersive experience?
I would say the trouble with The Great Gatsby as an immersive experience is that what people understand about The Great Gatsby right now is the Leonardo DiCaprio movie. Like they just want to go and party. And I actually think the immersive Great Gatsby wanted people to like think and do other things and like pay attention to the story. And so I think in a way it was in conflict with its own the expectations that it was giving to the audience. So again, if you're talking about the proscenium, right? People are expecting the 20s and the the flappers and blah 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 and all of that, but they're also expecting to see the story of the Great Gatsby. When people hear immersive Great Gatsby, they think Gatsby party. That's what I'm going to do. And if you don't offer them that and you start to offer them something else, it can become it's where like the inspiration and the idea that you had may not be what the audience wants. And that's so, I think an immersive Great Gatsby is not a bad idea. I also think it requires a lot of thinking about how you execute that in a way that's satisfying for people.
This is a very challenging topic. It's very interesting to me. Um, there was another question from the room. Oh, yeah, Pam Grace. You want to ask a question, Owen? So I don't take your job away?
Yeah, sure, sure. How do you address audience members who interact in problematic ways? How do you prepare for that?
Oh, so that is something that we as the mystery players deal with fairly often,
Mm,
especially if you're dealing with a very diverse audience, especially if it's an audience where, honestly, I was about to say if it's an audience that doesn't know each other very well, but it's both, especially if you have an audience that's very, very comfortable with each other. And I think there's a lot of ways that you can go about dealing with it. So you can sort of, if we're talking about the mystery player style, which is immersive through interaction, there's sort of a disengaged tactic that you can take where it's okay, I'm going to interact and with this individual, less and see how far I can pull away from them while still roping everybody else in. There's also times where if they have bought into the fiction contract of this
Mhm.
world that you have all created, if they are being problematic, 9 times out of 10, they are the only one that is being problematic.
mm,
And if everybody else is enjoying the world, you can sort of bring everybody else in on correcting their behavior. So if they're saying something that like is making people uncomfortable, or they're doing something in our shows, or we have made people characters, or we're constantly talking with people and like going through this world, having them be the one that says something to them instead of you as the performer. Because most of the time they'll listen to their friends and families before they listen to you. And I think that's also a lot of the immersive aspect is I am somebody that you maybe just met tonight, but because we've been interacting so much, we've now developed this relationship with each other that we're going to cherish for this evening, and then we're going to let it go once we leave.
I want to
I
go back
also
to okay, Blair,
Oh,
go.
quick one for that. And exactly what you said, Elijah. Like it is people do kind of self-police, and also you have to onboard people. So you have to tell people what is problematic in advance, give them the rules. People in situations like this, people want to know what to expect and want to know what the rules are. And immersive is a place where people do try to test those limits because they just get so engaged, immersed in it. From a very practical standpoint, it's about monitoring, making sure that actors are not in a situation where they're alone with anybody. It's about having people stationed in spaces where they are making sure if there's somebody problematic that they're identified. It's about giving the actors way through performance to signal that somebody is a problem. And when maybe you have a line, or maybe there's something, a phrase that they can say that says to the production assistant, "Hey, this person is being a problem. Track them," or actually, they've done something that's a problem. Let's remove them. And then you have to break the immersion a little bit because somebody has to come and take that person. But the goal is to like identify it without having to stop the show or impact anybody else, and just remove that person. But really letting people know what they can and cannot do so that their expectations are set. And you have a pretty zero tolerance policy for that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to the confusion between site-specific and immersive. This is to both of you. If somebody decides that they want to do a site-specific piece, um, what should they consider in terms of fulfilling their goal of it being immersive, or is it enough for it just to be site-specific? It's a play about bankers, and you're doing it in a banking environment. Um, how do you how do
It,
you think this thing through
I
creatively?
think site specific, I mean, I think the way that site specific becomes non-immersive is when you bring people somewhere, but they don't interact with the audience, and they don't really interact with the show. It's just a proscenium by another name. But if you're setting a play in a bank and you're in a bank, there is a certain level of immersion already. So again, it's that gray area of, once you've done that, how else are you immersing people? Because if it's, well, we're in a bank, but you're just sitting in rows of chairs and you sit there and watch us perform, that's not really immersive. Versus, I would say, okay, we're performing in a bank and you all get to sit at these desks and you get to interact with props and the performance is happening around you. That is immersive, and it's just a tiny little difference. But anything could be a theater, and it being site specific also has to feed the audience and feed the story.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to that I think a big agreeing with Blair totally. A big part of when it comes to site specific is I think the answer to the question why.
Yeah,
So if you want to do a play that's takes place in a bank and you decide I want to put this in a bank, why? Like what does putting it in
that's
a
great.
bank do for you that's different, or does for your audience that's different than just doing it in a theater? Because if the answer is just, well, it doesn't really change anything, you're just in a bank, then maybe, the immersion is lost a little bit there. But if you have this idea of, oh no, this world is happening inside of this bank, and we're allowing the audience to see this world and be in it, then you have a bit more immersion than you would if you just did it in a standard proscenium.
Right.
I guess in putting in elements that if somebody were walking into a bank, they wouldn't necessarily see or notice. So guiding the audience's attention in some way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No,
Susan
I
Crawford.
love the question of why. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
Why are you doing it there?
Yeah, actually that was the question I literally started this whole conversation with in my head. It's like, why are you doing it? Why are you doing immersive? Um, uh, did I miss anybody before we go to Susan? Because there were questions in the
We have a couple of other ones. Eric Rothman wanted to know how you keep time in synchronized events.
You rehearse for 4 months, and you have a soundscape that the cast recognizes when each scene is halfway done and when it's finished, but the audience won't
oh,
be able to hear,
what a
or they
great
won't notice.
what a great clue for the rest of us. Oh, that makes so much sense. So the soundscape, that's so interesting. Um, keep going. We got a lot of questions.
From Tracy Swedlow, is it stronger to lead people through the environment as you tell the story or let them explore it happening in all those rooms on demand?
I think it depends on your story.
Yeah.
I think it depends on how it's structured and how you choose to engage that story with your audience. For example, with our murder mysteries, we have specific moments in the show where we may have gathered everybody in this room to discuss something or like to watch somebody die or have something happen. But then we have specific moments where we encourage everybody to spread out on their own and like have side conversations with characters and see what they can find out. So for us, we allow it's a little bit of both. We have moments where we want people to wander and see what they can discover. And then we also have moments where we're leading them either through a specific moment or into a specific part of the environment.
Isn't it a danger of being a FOMO nightmare for people? Fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Yes, and I
Oh,
actually think that's why it really depends on your show. Like to use Masquerade as an example, let's say that was you just free roaming. Like if you never saw the chandelier drop, you would hate the show. You would go home and be like, what was that? Right? Like you have to lead people through that story in a very specific way so that they understand what's happening and they don't miss anything. So yeah, there's FOMO is definitely a part of it, but from a business standpoint, FOMO is exactly what I want because that means somebody wants to come back and see all the things that their friend told them that they missed.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Um, and where are we with the questions at this point?
Again from Eric Rothman, what levels of intimacy are in your show? Touching, providing food or something to ingest, challenging their personal identity, etc.
In our show, at least in this sh first show, people are directed not to touch any actors. There may be an offering of a hand to lead somebody somewhere, but that's the highest level of touch. There's also specific moments of somebody being offered something to eat. And those are kind of, but it's all very optional, right? And it's the actor who's initiating that offering, and then any audience member can choose to take that or not, and there's no real impact on the story. With the way that ours is built, also, we're not really, it's not a two-way as far as the dialogue. It's very much like offers are made to you, or the way that the script is structured. Rhetorical questions are asked. So we don't really challenge people, but I do say that often being in an immersive experience, people challenge their identity themselves, especially if you're in something where you're wearing a mask or if you're embodying a different character, that allows you to think a lot about your own personal identity. So we're not purposefully doing it, I guess, but it happens.
The use of masks is psychologically very interesting. I mean,
It
I've heard
is, yeah.
that the experience of an immersive piece with somebody wearing a mask is very different.
Yeah, it means people feel it allows you because people are not used to being performers, like most audience members are not used to being on stage, and when you're an immersive, you are on stage, and the audience is looking at you, and you're looking at the audience, and the actors are looking directly at you, and just like Elijah was saying, with actors not being used to like looking audience in the face, audience are also not used to looking actors in the face as they are talking to them, and the mask creates a barrier of protection from feeling like you're on display and you're being seen. And then it also allows you to engage in the world in a different way because, in theory, nobody knows who you are and nobody's going to know who you are after this. So you can do things that you wouldn't normally do.
Let's move to Susan and then come back to some more of the questions that are in the chat. See a lot of them. Susan.
Thank you. I have a question for Blair, whose course I finished in December and loved it. And one of my favorite parts was asking him to reverse engineer a few shows. How did this show get to where it got to? So this one is about Tony and Tina's wedding.
Yeah.
I gather it was immersive, but to what extent that you're talking about, I'm not sure, because I didn't see it because it was in my child rearing phase. Um, as were 30 years of Broadway shows. Um, but anyway, it's emerging partly because our pianist was part of participating in that show as a model possibly for the show we're trying to get on with our
Yeah.
so if you can do two things. One is, how immersive was it, and how did it get to where it got, and did it go from venue to venue? Those are all questions I don't.
They didn't move them. They moved the people from
They
venue to
didn't.
venue.
Yeah, I mean, Tony and Tina's wedding is hugely immersive. I mean, the
Yeah.
whole experience is that you are asked to show up as a guest to this wedding. So you're immediately embodying a character. You're sitting at a certain table. They interact with people in as like, oh, you're a family member, you're a friend, or you're this character. And I think the reason it was successful is because people weddings are entertaining even just when you go to a normal wedding and you either love it or you hate it, or there's parts of it that you love and there's parts of it that you hate. I think it's because it was fun. I think it was that the right level of interaction where you're still sort of you're seated most of the time, you're at your table, you're watching this show go on,
And
but
you're served dinner.
and you're served food. People love
Mhm.
food. I know like dinner theater has gone out of fashion, and mostly I think it's because the food is not very good and food quality has gone up, but people love eating. And it was just like, this is it's going to be a fun time. It's not going to ask a lot of you. And it is easy to replicate because you can basically do it at any space. So they didn't need a traditional theater and all of those resources to do it. You could just be in any space that you can find and call it the setting of a wedding reception. And that could be both site specific or not, which is a really powerful thing and why they could do hundreds of productions, all over the world. It's also very easy to translate to any culture, any language, because it's all the same. Weddings, whether it's a traditional Indian wedding or whatever, you could still do the same exact thing. And all you do is change the references, the culture, the costumes, and people know what that is. So I think it's an easy ask for the audience.
So
Something that you
was it the
right.
same? Was it in the same venue the whole time, or did they go to different venues over the course of the run?
They replicated it. So Tony, as far as I know, it was in maybe two different venues. I know they started like further downtown, and then maybe somebody else will know exactly. But I remember it was at like St. Luke's for a long time, right? So they moved to different
Right,
places
right.
out of like necessity. Maybe they wanted to scale up or scale down. But
I think
again, it's
they went to a restaurant. I mean,
yeah, they were in a restaurant for a while, but then
yeah.
they just replicated the show in a ton of different places with different casts. It was in Vegas, it was in, Dallas or wherever. So
Great, thank you.
Michael Bailey.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Hi, Bob. Again, happy birthday and happy to be back. This is a question for Blair and Elijah. As you know, I am a budding producer and drum manager. So when I hear immersive theater, my first brain goes to insurance because someone could fall, someone could say stuff. So can you just go into just like probably this isn't the best question, but how does like those like insurance policies? It's gonna be pretty expensive, right? I just want to, or like because God forbid someone gets hurt in your immersive show, they can sue you. And I'm just so just like can you elaborate on that? That's I'm just very curious. Or is it not thought about and you pray you cross your fingers, no one gets hurt, and
Well,
No,
have
let's
low
let's
that's
let's
not
have,
the answer.
let
costs.
let the answer come. There's an answer to this, isn't there?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Elijah, why don't you take it?
I know for mystery players, we have, because we do both public and private events. So we have, when people, if somebody's hiring us for a private event, we do have in our contracts like a liability clause saying like, hey, this is an immersive theater or this is an immersive event. Nothing crazy is going to happen. We're not shooting people out of cannons, but if something happens or if somebody falls or anything like that, that it's their own responsibility, that it's not ours. And then we also have contracts with that with the venues that we go to if we're going to do like a public ticketed event.
Yeah, the complicated and fun thing about ensuring an immersive theater, especially when you're not just doing a singular event,
Mhm.
is nobody's done it, so the insurers don't know what you're talking about. But there are things that people do that are very similar to what we do. So when I go and try to explain to an insurance company, and I have a great insurance company, and it is expensive, not more, I wouldn't say it's more or less expensive than any other policy, it's just expensive in different ways. I say we're a museum and we're a haunted house and we're a play, and they insure those things. They understand those things. They understand how to insure a corn maze. Like, yeah, somebody could get hurt there. So it's not more expensive. It's just different. And that also applies to a lot of other things that we have to do as a more permanent venue, which is you don't really worry when you're building a set for a more traditional like proscenium house about audience, like the general public touching it and what that means as far as how safely it needs to be built, that the audience is going to be on that set, it's fire retardant. Like those are all the things that because the audience interacts with it, you have to think much more deeply about, and that all has to be improved by the city. You can't just, build a set piece and throw it in, and everything that you put in has to be approved because the audience can interact with it. So our insurance is just it's just a different game because we don't have cast members flying or anything like that, or cars coming in, going over the audience, but we have people in our space. So somebody could trip and fall down the aisle of a traditional proscenium theater. You have that policy no matter where you are. It's just the difference that we had to think about is for our actors and performers because they are in close contact, and all of our set pieces and props and things like that because the audience interacts with it.
How was that? Was that a thorough enough answer, Michael?
It's great. It's great.
Okay. Okay.
I just wanted to say it just because I was curious. Thank you so much.
No, it's a good question. We're a producers organization. We ask these questions. We're supposed to ask these questions. Um, uh, Owen,
Yeah, next from Elizabeth Copeland. I have a question. My shows are not site specific, but they are what I call site relevant. I don't know how else to describe the theater slash environment. You're doing the show in a funeral home and also in the War Memorial in Detroit. How should I describe the venue options of these shows?
it's site specific. It may not be immersive. Well, no, your shows are. I saw your show. It
Yeah,
is immersive
right.
because the
But
audience, the
it's
audience makes choices about where they're going to do it, where they're going to go, and how they're
so
going to.
right.
Yeah,
But we
I
like
would
to
definitely
do
call
it
those
in, oh, sorry.
environments immersive.
Yes. But what do you call the site? I mean, it doesn't have to be in a funeral home, but it made it really cool that it was in a funeral home. That's why I call it site relevant. So just wondering, I don't want to say site specific because that makes it sound like the play actually takes place in a funeral home, which it
Hmm.
doesn't.
Well, I think then you're talking about any individual production, right? This
Hmm.
comes down
Hmm.
to, and make a lot of this when we talk about immersive comes down
Mhm.
to marketing. How are you describing it to the audience?
Right.
And, Elijah, if you're talking about murder mystery, that gives people a certain understanding of what they should expect to happen. And like it can you could say immersive murder mystery, you could say immersive, whatever you want to say, but I think it's how do we talk about it. So
Hmm.
if you called it site specific, Elizabeth, and it's
Hmm.
any different sites, if it's always going to be formed at a different site, it's still site specific work. It's just the site changes. So it could be immersive, it could be site specific. And that, but also if you're talking about your work to somebody else, that it can be
Mhm.
performed anywhere. Like you're talking to a producer, you're saying, yeah, it can be performed in
Mhm.
any different space. That's great. If you're talking to an audience, you're trying to sell a ticket, you're going to
Yeah.
say it's immersive, it's site specific.
Well, so here's the follow-on question. So we did this show at Frankie Campbell Funeral Home in Manhattan last November. If the location, the venue is a funeral home, and I say it's site specific, won't people think it's a play or a series of plays in a funeral home?
Well, this kind of comes down to the why. Like, why is
Yeah.
it in a funeral home? And the funeral homes are relevant to your play, so
Elizabeth,
it,
your play is enhanced by the funeral
yeah,
home
Right. Okay.
environment.
yes.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
If
So
it was a play
Yeah,
that
I
had
think
nothing to do with funeral homes and it was in a
yeah.
funeral home, that would be very
right.
confusing. And maybe you wouldn't want to say that. But and performing in alternative spaces is fine. But your play,
Mhm.
it is relevant that it's in a funeral home
Okay.
and
Right.
adds to the experience.
So
Yeah,
saying
I
site
think that
specific is
sites
okay.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say so.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think it's okay specifically because, like we said, the site
Mhm.
adds to the story. It helps
Right.
Mhm.
build the world of that play. So I think site specific should be something you would say about it.
Okay. Thank you.
We got a lot more questions, Owen. Keep going.
Yep. From iPhone, which I think is Robert Siegel. What is the value of audience agency going anywhere rather than just being in one intriguing place? I've been in four each info's space, but we were guided in sync with the plot.
It's a different form of storytelling. It's not
Yeah,
chronological storytelling.
that was
Basically, yeah.
that was my question because I've been in four where we were in one place, but we were guided constantly. We never made a choice of where we went or why.
So I think
Yeah.
oh, go ahead, Blair.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, I think that sort of circles around this question of like sites and what we want to do with it. How much um, of the story do you want to guide them through using your environment and using them as a group, but you're moving them versus if they're allowed to make their own choices, the immersion then at least for me, comes less from the environment itself and more the choices they're allowed to make within that environment. So I think both are valid. I think it's just situation dependent on which one you would want to go with.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, I think the most positive thing coming out of this conversation is the fact that there's a wide spectrum of storytelling that's possible,
Mhm.
and just moving away from the proscenium stage and opening up to the possibilities of telling your stories in different ways. Um, can't hurt.
Yeah.
No.
And something that just came to mind when we're talking about do we want to guide them or do we want to let them roam is I think sort of talking about what Blair mentioned earlier about with Phantom, I mean, you're gonna feel terrible if you miss the chandelier drop. Is there something you want them to see or is there something you want them to find? I think it goes back to this question of why. If you need them to see something, guide them. If you want them to find something, let them loose.
Right. And that's really, really key. And that comes down to what is the version of immersive that you want to create and
Mhm.
what is the story that you're trying to tell. And by the way, just because Masquerade is linear and you do move from room to room, there's another version of immersive Phantom where you just let people loose in an opera house and they go discover things. But if I'm using Phantom of the Opera as my IP to create something, is that what the audience is going to expect? Can I sell that to that? Can I explain that to them? Or do they want to just come see Phantom and be dressed up and be in fun environments? And that's ultimately a business decision and also a
Right.
creative decision. How do you want to express the story that you're trying to tell?
Oh, we got more.
I Candy, you have a question. Candy Carl has a question. What is the root difference between calling something just an alternate venue versus site specific? The site is part of the story. I think we've answered that. But if there's anything else you have,
Candy,
Candy,
did you have a follow-up to it, Candy? Did anything else?
Yeah, you were talking about it as this is an alternate venue because it's an interesting space, and what does it have to do with the story you're telling? Is it just an unusual environment for you to tell a story that isn't tied into that particular environment, but it aids it? Or is it, I can't find a venue to perform, so I'm going to go over here and because I want to do this play and I'm going to put it in this and call it site specific when it's actually just an alternate venue for a whole nother story. You
Well,
see what
again, we go back to the whole basic premise, which is that the terms that you use is about marketing, not
It's
necessarily
about
about.
marketing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Alternate venue is not really a marketing term. Like
no.
it doesn't do anything for anyone. But site specific is.
You
So
did a haunted house piece, Candy, in Connecticut. What didn't you, or was it a Christmas Carol that was in a
Yeah, we've
a
done
mansion?
two or three actually. We've done a site-specific play about Eugene O'Neill's actor father James and William Gillette, who created Sherlock Holmes, inside Gillette Castle, inside his retirement home. And there was a story about these two men. The place that it was taking place was actually at the Players Club in New York City.
hmm.
But the venue happened to be the home of one of the actors. So it enhanced the environment, but it wasn't specific to that living room. They were actually in the Players Club as part of that.
Hmm.
The Christmas Carol one,
I've been in that room.
yeah, and we're going back there. We're doing a one-man play on Yukitaka Osaki, William Gillette's gentleman valet, and he actually would come up and sit in that room at 11 o'clock every night and talk to William Gillette.
Well,
So
it's kind of a difference between a creative decision and a marketing decision. The creative
Mhm.
decision is basically this would be a great place to do this play. The marketing decision doesn't necessarily say that you want to advertise it as site specific. It's just that
Right.
this play is being done in in an appropriate space that will
yeah,
give the atmosphere that you want.
yeah.
Well, intimate might become the term that you use there.
Yeah.
Maybe immersive if it makes sense for you, but you start to come up with other ways of marketing that to people.
What's next? Oh,
All right, and I do have to say I have to get going after this, so I would recommend if anyone still has questions after I ask this one to just raise their hand either virtually
Yeah.
or but here's a question from Janet Conrad. Is it often done to have audience members given written scripts and to have them participate by reading certain segments of the play?
that kind of goes into the territory of devised theater as well.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I was gonna say I think there's positives to both. I think there's a lot of moments where if somebody's in an immersive setting and they're just game for what is happening, you'll have things that are said and creations that happen in the moment, things that are almost devised within a scripted world, that you didn't expect.
Right.
You can also use scripted elements within an immersive setting to sort of set expectations, like we were talking about earlier. Like for example, something that Mystery Players does is we have the curtain speech read out by an audience member, so we give it to them scripted. That helps sort of set the expectations of what they can and can't do, while at the same time sort of beginning that immersion.
Yeah, and I think part of what is often very true about immersive is you not to say that the story is not important, not to say that the creative is not important, but you are coming at it from the outside in. So if you're
Mhm.
interested in doing murder mysteries, you build what that looks like based on, where are we going to be performing and how are we going to be doing it. But you start with like murder mystery plays, right? And then you create creative around that as opposed to, oh, I wrote this immersive murder mystery play script because it just doesn't work. And so when you are creating the thing from the outside in, you may come to a point in your process where you say having the audience read makes sense. In my
Mhm.
show, everything has to happen at a very specific time, and the characters have to get certain lines so that certain plot points happen. So if the audience was asked to do it, not only would it kind of break the magic of the world, but what if they don't read it? What if they read it and it takes them 5 minutes? There's things that like an hour structure we can't do, but there are lots and lots and lots of structures where that can happen. And I think it's totally down to what your creative is.
Mhm.
Well, I want to thank you. That was very, very interesting and very, very helpful. And it's been an excellent evening. Thank you.
Do you want me to keep going down the list, Bob, of
Yeah, yeah.
GW uh, audience size? I mean, Elijah, I'm assuming your audience size is flexible because you said you do private and sometimes public and in different spaces, right?
Yeah, our audience size is fairly flexible. I've done audiences as small as 10 and as big as 240.
Yeah.
And it just, yeah. So we sort of roll with whatever size our audience is. And we tend to have um based on our audience size, because we can do public and private, we have like a minimum of how many actors we need in the given space. So the larger the audience is, the more actors we need in this space to help keep things flowing.
I wanted to ask a question of you, Blair, off of what DW is saying, which is basically, is producing immersive theater uh, a less expensive way of doing it, or is it equally expensive as other producing that you do? Is it a way of saving money, or is it a way of spending more money?
It's cheaper in Denver.
It's cheaper in Denver.
Again,
Everything's
like
cheaper in Denver.
what's the what's the size of a hole? Like you it can be cheaper and it can be hugely more expensive. The
Mhm.
question I think a lot of people ask with immersive is how do I make the model work for what I am creating and what I want to create? So it's not, I have to think about audience size. It is very important. My audience size is determined by the fire marshal, not me, because they'll come into the space and say, you can have this many people in this space. I have an estimate of how many people I think it could be, and it's going to be between 150 and 200 people. But you also want it to be comfortable, and you adjust based on how the space feels and how the room is filled and all types of different things. So I think that there are many, many ways to save when it comes to doing something immersively. Um, Real estate is often one of the biggest savings because theaters know what they expect and they're going to ask you to pay this amount of money and that's going to be that. Whereas if you can go into these alternate spaces, you can find some real savings there by being in spaces that are not traditionally theaters. And from a production standpoint, sometimes when you're going into an environment we're really truly building out all the environments, but sometimes people are going into environments that are pre-built or have a lot of what they need. So you're not thinking about, oh, I had to build an entire set. I just need to sort of dress this space to be fit for what I want. So there's a lot of ways to save. And, you're also in alternative spaces where you probably don't have unions. So again, you save a lot there. But I know immersive projects that have spent much more. A Masquerade was $25 million, so same as a Broadway show.
Um, I think Tracy wants to know, well, you have done musical, Elijah. That's what your whole company does.
Mhm.
How do you handle the music if it's key to the show? Is there anything more complicated about doing a musical than doing any other show in an immersive style?
Not necessarily, only because a lot the music that we've created for the murder mysteries is all it's original, so we have all of those tracks. So if for some reason we're doing a small audience and we're like, oh, we just need to be able to play this track for the actors to be able to sing, that's something that we can do. What we do most of the time, unless we have a really, really small audience, is we always have a live pianist. So part of our company is keyboardists and pianists that travel with the actors, either for private or public shows to be able to sort of play. And it also makes it a fun moment when you have a pianist that the actors are also interacting with and encouraging the audience to talk to during the show, as opposed to just like this person off to the side, because our all of our pianists are also actors, so they're like, great, well, this is what I'm doing, and it's a fun element that we get to play with.
Well, I would say tracks in a immersive show could be complicated. It would terrify me. I think having a live performer there who can actually adjust to whatever's going on, it
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I always prefer when we can have somebody playing live, but I've also done shows where we use tracks and it's just fine. But yeah, no, I agree with you. It's the idea that there's just like how we can adapt to the audience as to what's happening, our pianist can adapt to what's happening, because a lot of them, just because they enjoy it and it's fun, will also underscore all of like the key moments in the show to like raise tension, and it's incredible working with them.
Well, are there any other questions from the room? I forget what's in the
Ida asked about
raise your hands
what
first.
goal,
Okay.
challenges, crisis, and climax. You don't really lose any of those things. You just so for example, even though we have 11 different environments, every single person is a part of the same story. Everyone has one goal. So no matter where you are in the show, you know that everybody is chasing the one goal. Steve has written a 14-page guide to like what our version of immersive is and how you write a script based on that.
Yikes.
So, for example, you have a Maltese Falcon. Every single person is after the Maltese Falcon, right? So if I'm an audience member, I know what each individual person's challenge is at any given moment. And then I know as characters interact, there is the crisis, the things that are happening, the shifts in the world. We actually have a built-in A and B version of our show based on if an audience member lets a certain character do a certain thing, and that can completely change how the show goes. And then trying to inform everybody of that is a whole nother complicated thing, which I won't even get into. But and then you bring all the audience to the same place. So if all the characters end in the same place, and all the audience is following those characters, then everybody's going to end up at the same place for the climax. So you really can create all those things no matter how you structure it immersively. And the other thing that we practice is one scene, one story, so that if anytime somebody's entering a room, there's going to be an interaction with that person. We have to treat it as if nobody in that room has any idea what's going on, right? So characters say their name a lot or say the name of the other person a lot because they need to give context to somebody who may have just shown up to this room. And you make sure that the scene, whatever is happening in that scene, it begins and it ends in that room. And it doesn't go on to the next room. I don't need to follow that. I can choose to follow somebody or I can choose to stay here. But in watching that scene and that interaction between those two characters, I got everything that I need.
It doesn't sound easy, guys. It doesn't sound easy.
But
We're
it's
rehearsing
so
for
much
4 months. It's
fun.
not.
DW, you have your hand raised. So you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I have a question. I was trying to get my head around this. Do you have like, is there the actors? You got 11 rooms. Do you have the same people in each room all evening, or do those actors, those characters move to different rooms? I'm
Yeah.
just trying to figure out how it works, and then somebody else comes in. How does that work?
Some characters are held to place and some characters are not. So there are some people whose are driven by their environment, and particularly with our story. So I haven't actually talked any about a show. So the show is called Midnight's Dream. It is inspired by Midsummer Night's Dream, but also Jim Henson's Labyrinth and this narrative poem called The Goblin Market. And so, as you imagine, you have characters from the human world, our central couple, which in this version takes Laura and Lizzie from the Goblin Market in place of Hermia and Helena. Anyway, it's a lot. But the point is that those characters are entering a world that they are not home in. And so when they go into the forest, when they go into, this other world, they are the ones who are moving around, but there are people who this is their home and they are the ones who are in place. So I had this very strange experience of watching the whole entire show happened simultaneously in a rehearsal studio, which is mind-boggling, but it actually worked out. So you'll see that there are characters where their room is their environment and they spend the entire show there. And then there are other characters who are moving from environment to environment, bumping into each other, interacting with each other. And so you have a mix so that there is some grounded nature to it. And do I feel bad for those actors? No, because it's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be audiences coming in, but it is a different job than, I'm going off stage, I'm going to a different scene, I'm moving around, sort of owning a space and claiming it and controlling it is a very complicated work as well.
So I'm curious, do the audience then have the option they could stay in the same room all night, or they would
Yeah.
go? And
If
they
you want
would,
to stay in the same room all night, you are more than welcome and see who shows up. If you want to just chase a character around all night, you are more than welcome to do that. I think there are three different types of audience members. I think there's like the chaos audience members who will just be like, I need to go into every room. And they'll just run around and they won't pay attention to anything and they won't try to follow a story and they won't care and they're just going to go into every room. I think there are people who are going to want to really just ground themselves and say, like, okay, I'm just going to follow this person because that's going to help me understand what's going on. Now they will lose that person because that person will disappear at one point because they have to have a bathroom break, but they'll come back pretty soon, pretty soon. And then I think that there are people who are kind of a mix. They may go follow a character, but if they get into a room that's too crowded, maybe they'll peel off and go on a discovery. Maybe they'll just want to quietly explore environments, but then they will be, interrupted by performance. So I think you'll get three different types of people, and that if we're talking about the business or we're talking about what we're marketing and what we're selling to people, that's what we're offering. You get to choose what your experience is like. And there's a lot of people, and one of the things that we talk about, and one of the reasons why I even call it dirt, is that there are a lot of people who think that they don't like theater and that they don't go to the theater. There are a lot of people who don't see the things that they do, like an escape room, like a haunted house, as going to the theater, even though it's basically just theater. And so we are offering people a chance, basically a gateway drug into the theater, into watching performance under the guise of it's an immersive experience. It's something different. You're not stuck sitting in a chair that, the last time you went, you were in school and it was uncomfortable and you watched Shakespeare for 4 hours. It's not that, but it is Shakespeare. So, you give them a different way of coming in and watching performance in theater, and that is appealing to a lot of people.
so when do,
Go. It's okay, DW, go. No, ask your question.
oh, I just wonder when he opens. I want to know how I can see the show.
When you open.
I open in June. We're opening Denver in downtown Denver. Yeah, we're gonna be pretty much rehearsing and building and teching 11 different 90-minute shows is very complicated because each room has to be fully teched throughout the entire show, and it has its own environment and its own tech. So it's basically just doing like checking an entire play 11 times. And we have a cabaret show within a show that also has to be teched, and that's a whole different environment.
So how long are you going to be having this? I thought you were opening up with a whole theater, the DIRT theater.
Yeah.
So it's going it's going to actually be for these opening shows and also as an ongoing space.
Absolutely. So our goal, I don't want to be a landlord. I'm not interested in booking things or renting out theaters. I just
I'm
think
glad to
that's a
hear that.
speed run to being a horrible person and a villain. What we are doing is we are creating something. So we have a couple of different goals. We want to bring commercial open-ended theater to smaller cities that aren't Chicago, that aren't New York, and I mean LA if you consider that market. We want to create something that is scaled to the city that it's in, and we want to create something that can be open-ended. We want to create something that people do come back to because there's so much content that you have to come back. You have to come like 4 or 5 times if you wanted to see every scene, just logistically. And we know that part of the challenges of any show, any long running show is like, well, if audience have seen it, they've seen it, they're not going to come back. So by building out this venue, owning our space and having it be this sort of non-traditional environment, we're going to create a box, call it a black box or a warm gray shell is what we like to call it, which we can take all of our set and all of our props and all of our costumes out. We can move the walls. We can put in a completely different concept. We can have a show that's about a post-apocalyptic wasteland full of zombies as the next show. And all that requires us to do is keep our company. We want to build continual employment for people. So we keep the company. We create a show around them. We create this zombie show around the environment, the shape of the structure that we have. And people can come back and now they're going to see a completely different new show in the same exact space that has been transformed and now looks entirely different. So it's from a business model standpoint, we're trying to make that continuity and that sustainability.
So Blair, how many cities do you live in now?
Too many. Add another one. Yeah.
Oh my God. All right. I think we're gonna call it a day here. I want to thank Blair. Thanks. I mean, a huge amount. Oh no, I didn't want to end yet. Elijah, tell us how we reach out to the Mystery Theater and when your next productions are and how we can come see your shows.
Absolutely. So I am putting the link to our workshop in the chat right now. And then you can find us on all social medias at the Mystery Players. We tend to post when we are hosting a public event. As of right now, I think we are gearing up to have something in June, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. Because we just finished a season at a venue here in New York. So yeah, we try to stay as updated as we can, and we'll let you know where we are.
So I'm going to ask you guys to hang in because there's more questions, but I want to say goodbye to the YouTube audience right now. So I'm going to do my little thing here. Um, Here I am. I knew I was here somewhere. So I want to thank Blair and I want to thank Elijah for being part of this conversation today. Something I don't know a huge amount about, but it's very interesting, and I think it's very positive to be opening people's creative minds and think about things in other ways. So thanks to everybody who was in the room today. Good to have you all here, my TRU community. If you're out there and you're new to TRU. Thank you for finding us. I'm glad you found us. I hope. Uh, I have no idea why or how, but we got like 4,000 followers, and we've had. I put these things on YouTube. We had one thing that went viral. We had 311,500 views on it. So people are actually seeing this. So hi, welcome to TRU. Hope you like what we do, and I hope you'll be part of us next week. I have. Chris Grady, who's a guy, a producer in the UK, who just came back from Ukraine, and he's been creatively inspired by what he found there. And we're going to talk about how art can shine even during a war. He's going to tell us about what's going on in the Ukraine. I think it should be very moving. 2 weeks from now, we're going to have Coolidge Harris III, who's a playwright who had a play that was in our play reading series 3 or 4 years ago. And he's going to tell us about the journey that he's gone through since then. And he's about to have his play become part of the streaming musicals platforms of works, theater works that people can actually come and view. We're going to talk about how all that happened. Going to have a conversation about casting and casting directors and the casting process. Anything you want, just email me. By the way, if you want to be invited every week to see all these things, I can make that happen. Just email me at trunltd@aol.com. That's trunltd@aol.com. Put you on the list, and you can also check our website, truonline.org, truonline.org, and see what else is coming up. We do lots of stuff. We do lots of stuff. That's why I'm so tired. Hopefully we'll see you in the weeks to come. And if you come for free, it's fine. I mean, we've been doing this as a community service since 2020, and yeah, we want to have you here. If you can also help us and support us with a donation, that would be great. You can go to TRU Donate, trudonate.com, trudonate.com, and give us a little help to keep us going. I would appreciate it. That's it. I hope to see you in the weeks to come, and thank you for being with us.